Early on in the course, we saw message boxes that allowed us to present a prompt to the user and get some input from them based on a set of buttons, such as yes, no, cancel, that they could click. And we could handle those different buttons and do different things based on their choice. We later saw an input box dialog in which the user could enter a string based on a prompt that we give them and put that value into a string variable and do something with it. However, both of those dialogs are kind of limited. The message box has limited sets of buttons that we can use. We can't create our own buttons. And the input box only allows us to enter one string at a time. There may be times when we want to enter something other than a string. So as you might have guessed, with the past two lessons of creating our own, of adding multiple forms and creating modal dialogs, we can create our own custom dialogs. So here in this little application, we have our list of Cougar student ambassadors and a data file that is being pulled from to populate the list box. And I can simply click on each person and see their name, their major, and their class standing as coming from the external data. And the external data is being read into a list using a class called student. But I want to be able to add more students. I can click the Add New Student button, and it brings up a dialog box. This is simply a second form that I added to my application, called it Add Student. That was the name of the form. And we can enter a student's name. I'm going to enter George Garcia, and I can choose a major. Let's say George is a chemistry major, and class standing, we'll make him a sophomore. And then I can click Submit. And I can continue to add more names. I'm going to go ahead and click Cancel, or I can click the close box, either way. And now we see George Garcia in our list. So we use that dialog to get input from the user and then repopulate the list and allow the user to interact with that new data. As I add new names, I am writing the new data back out to the data file so that it does persist. Let's take a little closer look at how this was done. I started the project by adding a student.vb data class, and then I also added a new form called addStudent.vb. In the form 1, I have two classable variables. One is a list of students named ambassadors, and the other is a string which contains my file name of the data file called file name. But I want you to notice one thing. I declared those both as public. That's the key to the easiest way of passing values between forms. If I make a variable public, I can access it outside of this class, which means I can get to it from another class, which would be a different form. My form load, I'm reading the data. So nothing we haven't seen before, creating a stream reader object, reading the first lines of the header row, ignoring it, and then using a loop to read each line, splitting it on the commas, and then my ambassadors.add new student, and I'm adding those four elements from the split command. Close. And then I have a method called update list. That's going to update our list box. Do that all in a try catch, so if something goes wrong, I can alert the user. Here is the update list. I'm going to clear the items in the list box named LST students. I'm going to use link to sort the ambassadors list by their last first property. Now that ambassadors.clear for some reason does not work consistently. So what I did instead in a for each, because I want to get rid of the stuff that's currently ambassadors, so I don't need duplicates. In my for each, ABC is student in temp. I'm going to remove element 0, and then I'm going to add to ambassadors the value from the temp list. And then I'm also going to add the abc.lastFirst into the items for the list box. That'll populate the list box. That updates the ambassadors list so it's alphabetical by last first. And then if lststudents.items.count is greater than 0, I'm going to reset the selected index to the very first item. I do that by selecting -1 and then doing a 0. In case the 0 was previously selected, the first item was previously selected, and maybe we've updated, and that's no longer the right person because something alphabetically has come before that. That's why I do the -1 and the 0. Just a little trick. When we select an item from the list box, LST students.selectedIndex, if it's -1, meaning nothing is selected, then for the student name, we'll put in select a student from the list, major and class standing with no data. Otherwise, in most cases, we're going to create current student as a new student equals ambassadors, LST students.selectedIndex. Whatever the selected index was of that list box, we're going to call the ambassadors list item. And we'll simply set the student name, the major, and the class accordingly to the data that's in that student. Now here's the BTN add button. We want to bring up that dialog, and that's the focus of this lesson. I'm going to dim a variable as a new add student. That's my second window. That's the dialog. I'm going to set its top and left properties to 50 from the top and 150 from the left, and I'm going to use a show dialog. Now when that show dialog happens, this statement here does not execute until the dialog is closed. So what will happen when we close the dialog, it's going to come back and run that update list and update my list box. So it's alphabetical, and we'll select the first item in the list. Let's take a look at the add student. So here I simply created 2 text boxes, a combo box with a collection of the different majors, and a combo box with a collection of the different class standings, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, graduate. The cancel button simply closes this dialog, but the submit button takes this information and creates a new student. Let's take a look at that code. So the submit button takes form1.ambassador. Since ambassador is public, I can access it by calling it from its form, form1.ambassadors.add. And what I'm going to add is a new student of the text of txt first, the text of txt last, the text of my major combo box, as well as that of the combo box for the class standing. Now I didn't do anything as far as testing to make sure there's actually data there. Probably should have, but in the interest of time and just as a quick demo, didn't worry about doing that. I'm simply going to show you how we can transfer the data between the two. So that by making ambassadors public, I'm able to access it. Now I'm going to call a method called persist data. That simply writes the data back out of all of my records in the ambassadors list to that data file. Nothing we haven't done previously. I'm going to clear the text boxes and the combo boxes and set the focus back to txt first, so I might enter another student. Maybe I want to enter 5 different students or 20 different students. I could do that without leaving the form. Here's that me.close on the cancel, and the me here refers to this class of the add student, not my form 1. So when we close and we go back to our code here, it's going to update the list. And that's the simple way of passing data between forms. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.